Hello and welcome. My name just so happens to be Walker Stipe. Today we are talking about an idea I had. We're talking about that. It's called Surreal GANs. Kind of got the hots for the old surreal, and I think GANs are super badass. So this is kind of a request video. Make it. I'll make it eventually if no one else does, but or at least try and make it. I don't know if it works. It hasn't happened yet. And since Jeffrey Hinton's putting together idea papers, I thought I'd do an idea video. Why the hell not? So if you're good with neural nets and whatever, feel free to make this. If you're not, enjoy the show and feel free to learn about this stuff. It's fascinating, and well, GANs and deepfakes are going to shit on the world. We've done that. Nothing's changed as far as I'm aware with that fact. So evergreen content, the end of the world, yay. But I think delving into what a GAN is and can be will be not only rather vital, but also rather interesting. So, question I posed in some other video and has been reverberating throughout my mind for some time now is, what if the self-adversarial component approached, potentially reached, one? With black holes, what is the singularity? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, it's just a really shocking idea. And to be succinct as I can, the self-adversary is sort of like how critical you are of yourself. What happens if you actually become fully self-critical is you start taking moves to end yourself. Literally, commit Sudoku. What is this, Nancy Drew? Anybody get that? If you didn't, don't worry about it. It's a friendly joke. So, what I'm wondering is what would happen if you went full self-critical, full self-adversarial, sort of working against your own self, but you also didn't die. Sort of you overcame your best worst self, this sort of thing. And the entire Berserk series, the manga, I guess, is a kind of fair instantiation of this this sort of struggle. Obviously, they're technically two separate characters, Griffith and Guts. Hence the reference to the stomach. But the stomach is sort of what I'm referring to as sort of the ability to undergo pain and suffering and this sort of thing. And, the more you're able to do that with yourself, sort of at all times in all ways, then the better you are able to scale, often to infinity and to the moon. And then there's the entire theoretical field of self-play, which has been incredibly successful. It's really a big part of why AI has gotten anywhere in the past few years. If you want to talk to somebody who's literally the highest paid AI researcher in the known world, we don't know about China, but in the sort of normal world, Ilya Sutskever, one of my favorite human beings ever, has lots of talks on self-play and papers. So go for that. Shut the fuck up about Bitcoin and coins in general and in particular. God damn it, Lex Friedman. Talk to Tim Dillon again and Giannis Papas. That was great. What's a GAN? Did I skip it? I did skip it. What's a GAN? You didn't see anything. What's a GAN? What's a generative adversarial network? What a great question. Well, it's a neural network and it's got it, and boring. What's a GAN? But it's not a sleep vest. We have a generator, a sneaky little man or woman or robot or dog, cat, etc. Maybe you're into platypusi. There's a joke there. It's obvious, and you got it. You are creating things. The Joker is making plans, and he's creating. Much of the time, it's a picture. Literally, you're making a picture. You know what a picture is. And they're fake. They're forgeries, right? They're not real pictures. They're fake. They're generated. And so you have a discriminator, which is our delightful little Sherlock Holmes guy. And I just love Sherlock Holmes a whole hell of a lot. And he or she or what have you is attempting to determine, so it receives an image and it doesn't know where it came from. Is this the Joker's work? Is this the generator's work? Or did this actually sort of come from the real world? Is this a real picture? And they have that sort of back and forth, and a key component here is that it starts from random noise, right? So like the Joker is doing little finger paintings and he's dog shit and he doesn't know what he's doing. But eventually, by the process of the Joker fighting Sherlock Holmes, the generator and the discriminator fighting each other, they both get really fucking good. And potentially, sort of necessarily and obviously, the Joker eventually has the potential to become better than Van Gogh and Jackson Pollock and any other of these, Edvard Munch, Munch, however the fuck you say his name, becomes the best artist possible. That's surreal numbers and things. Not as often talked about. So, what is a surreal GAN? Well, it's a bullshit idea I thought of and am presenting here. It has a sort of self-adversarial entangled. It's a single thing. It's not two separate characters. It's one. It's an agent with a mental problem. We'll get briefly into that in a moment. I don't have any mental problems. What the fuck are you talking about? Great. So basically, it's a GAN, but it's self-adversarial in an entangled way. It doesn't have two components. It doesn't have a good guy and a bad guy, a Joker and Sherlock Holmes, a generator and discriminator. It has itself, and it has to do both of these itself, and we'll get into that. But this is, A, it sounds crazy, and B, it's a little bit grounded in crazy. This is sort of trying to look at some of the relatively common sorts of mental illnesses that humans can have and figure out how we can sort of weaponize those. I'm a great guy. What are you talking about? So, what are the steps for this thing in a short fashion? Well, step one, become your own worst enemy. This is very similar to self-adversarial learning, self-supervised learning, Jan LeCun, which we've talked a lot about, and of course, self-surreal learning, adversarial learning, which has so many guarantees to be awesome and infinite in these sorts of things and efficient and da-da-da. So we want to do that, but in an entangled way. We'll get into that. So, step one, become your own worst enemy. Step two, win. Defeat yourself. Become your own self-actualized, self-guiding agent. Step three, realize everyone else are bitches. This is kind of the thing with you are not only your own worst enemy, but you are your worst enemy. Everyone else is weak. This is the goal, that you're able to rise above, and this is shown to be the case. AlphaZero is a very good case. Self-play got it. No human can begin to beat AlphaZero because of this I think it's fair to say, in primary cause to this self-play mechanism. So, and lastly, repeat with infinite gains, surreally infinite. There is no limit. The limit does not exist. So, deities, watch out. Mentioning the occult, I began this, no idea what this is, so don't freak out. Obviously, I make a lot of religious jokes, but I am not, whatever. But this is fun. So, Ouroboros, I clearly don't know how to say it, is an ancient symbol depicting a serpent or dragon eating its own tail. Originating in ancient Egyptian iconography, the Ouroboros entered Western tradition via Greek. Woo! We like the Greek philosophers. Greek and their food. Not important. And Giannis Pappas, the guy is hilarious. Greek magical tradition. And it was adopted as a symbol in Gnosticism and Hermeticism, blah, blah, blah. And notably in alchemy, which, I'm the guy who's talking about we can make something from nothing because surreal numbers and implications of acts. It's fun. It's fun. And, an alchemy orb will give you a rare item. I digress. I was accused of being a Gnostic the other day, much in the same way Jordan Peterson accuses Nietzsche of being a nihilist, which shows him to be a bit of an imbecile, which is fine. But I am not a Gnostic. I'm just very, very close. but I'm not, and the infinitesimal is an infinite space. We've been over this. I'll stop having too much fun. Clearly I am. So who gives a shit about the Surreal GAN? Well, we want to do entanglement, okay? We want to do that. I believe, I just recalled this, but I believe Geoffrey Hinton, the legend, has a paper from relatively recently about entanglement, and it was one of the coolest papers I've ever read. It's relatively recent, I think, and I don't think it got a lot of coverage. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I won't. Who knows? And quantum computing, right? Quantum entanglement. It's just some of the coolest, most mind-blowing shit that has literally ever been discovered by the humanity. But I've been learning about some quantum computing stuff lately, and sort of the exponential sort of speed up that you get by doing quantum computing comes from entanglement, and the way it scales is literally exponential. Instead of basically for every bit or qubit you add not a new qubit to like a 0 and 1 details. You add a power of 2, right? Which you're putting powers together, you're getting massive, and that's why quantum computing is very close to as exciting as AI. And if you haven't figured out that I have a bit of a fancy for AI, now you do. So entanglement allows for exponential growth in quantum computing, and there are many other examples of sort of as things converge to a point, things get really, really weird, such as the speed of light and event horizons and things in the real physical instantiated world. So there's that. Now, madness. I mentioned this briefly earlier. Philip K. Dick is one of my favorite authors ever. I was going to say, I don't know how he did what he did, but we do know, in part, it was due to amphetamines, and probably having a bit of, perhaps, schizophrenia or something. The guy was not normal and good. Fuck normal. God damn, so boring, so useless. Get out. Go away. In more particular, a lot of his books have a incredibly unreliable narrator, to the extent that they're kind of adversarial to the reader. I think it's A Scanner Darkly. That's the one, which is one of the greatest films ever with Neo. I'm blanking on his name. Cyberpunk guy. Beautiful. Am I copying his hair? No, I never would do such a thing. Copying Reed Duke's hair. And Robert Downey Jr. there in that, as well as Winona, the lady from Stranger Things. Doesn't matter. But the main character is a cop and is also a massive drug dealer. And he is hunting himself, and he doesn't even know. So this is an example of a mental split, and that's how do I say this? There are many features of the human psyche that we often look at as only bad. But I think we also need to recognize that if you sort of completely exclude the possibility of going too far in these spaces, you end up with a lobotomized, lesser mind. And obviously we have people like John Nash. The number of brilliant people who also went insane is hilarious. These two features are comorbid. They often hold hands. And why is that? Well, to some extent we don't need to know. We just need to take note and say, hey, we should have the possibility of insanity. Because pure sanity is quite useless for being the best and being creative and yada yada yada. So anything else on that? Yeah, I guess to bring it back to the Greeks, I think it was Aristotle, which was basically, if you can't, consider an alternative opinion, which you may not even hold yourself, if you can't consider it to be true and play out the implications in your head, can you really think? I mean, kind of, but only in one way, which is the same thing as an inanimate object. It just exists statically, flaccidly, which is no fun. That's no fun, nor is it effective, and whatnot. So, imagination, hallucination, these things are vital, and we're getting better with that. Joshua Bengio's doing some stuff there. Hurrah. I've talked about Chelsea Finn more than anyone has a right to. So, okay. It's compression, right? It's transfer learning. It's adversary modeling, which is agent modeling, which is hard as fuck to begin with. Jacob Forster, he is trying. So are others, but he's the one I'm most aware of. And it's tough. It's really tough to model the mind of other people. This is one of the reasons I'm fascinated by both empathy, sociopaths, and autism, particularly as of late, autists with animals. I have a huge affinity for animals. Don't quite understand why that is, and I'm definitely curious. There's a lot of people I don't got a lot of empathy for. Gotta be real honest. So I gotta force myself to at least pretend that I give a shit. At least pretend. So it's compression. We are forcing this single network to perform two tasks. So it's also multitask, but focus. But it's forcing all of this information to accomplish these two fundamentally separate and adversarial. I need a different word for that, so it's less redundant. These different things to fit inside of one mind. It's literally forcing a fundamental mental split. AI is crazy, dude. It's insane. Literally meta. And it's transfer learning. This is a big one. So first off, transfer learning is hard as shit. We have not cracked the code. This is something I've fucked with a lot on my own time, and it's weird. It kind of works, but it doesn't, and we don't get it yet. So, and this is one of if you want funding, this is a good one to go for, because we realize that sort of once we crack transfer learning, whoa, really, we're talking about AGI, Terminator level shit real quick, which is spicy. But I'm hoping that this could potentially really elucidate some transfer learning sort of tips and tricks by forcing the model to do two different things, and then my expectation is that it would implicitly learn and use different skills, or it would share skills across adversaries or across tasks is another way to say it. So make more sense, hopefully, when you see the model. But for instance, let's use the classic cat thing, right? So you have a CNN, a convolutional neural network, and it learns to detect ears in some layer of your pooling and da-da-da. In some layer, it learns to detect ears really well. And let's say the generator learns how to do that. Well, I'm hoping that, at least in some part, maybe not explicitly, but maybe in a very high-dimensional vector space type of way, realizing you can't see this hand, but you can see this hand, in a very high-dimensional vector space kind of way, that shape of the ear gets used by the other sort of side of the brain, the other agent, right? We're kind of talking about a personality split here, right? To where it sort of unconsciously, intuitively, system one way is able to just all of a sudden have a skill, which it didn't learn explicitly. So that's kind of the point of transfer learning there. Hope you enjoy the verbose version. And then it's adversary modeling. It's also sort of trying to understand itself, right? Not only is it fighting itself, but it is that self. You know, at the end of the day, it is the same brain matter. It's the same gray matter, gray cells. So a lot of this is like, what the fuck would happen? I don't know. Let's make it. Let's scale it up. Let's see what the shit happens. All right, the architecture I'll lay out here. It's very simple and could be shit. But regardless of this idea in particular, I do believe we need to figure out both how to approach the limit of both a full self-adversarial value. You know, the adversary and the self, the good guy, sort of have equal sway, which is that's some bullshit, crazy, you've been drinking, which I have, kind of stuff there. So that's one thing. And then separately, we really need to make a fully entangled self, you know, on like the architecture level. Mentioned this at the very end, but Jan LeCun recently, what the fuck is the name of the paper? Barlow twins. Jan LeCun recently proposed or published a paper on the Barlow. That's the Hogan twins. The Barlow twins. I don't know who they are in real life, but it's dueling neural networks, but they're separate networks. I want to try entangling those networks. One network. One world order. Yeah, which we do here by doing, yeah. I guess this is the the CNN learns the ear. That's the feature extraction thing. You know, it's extracting, it's sort of gaining knowledge about the world, right? Oh, cats have ears. Interesting. We didn't know that before. That was not imputed into us de facto, which is a very common misconception about the human mind. We don't start as blank slates, right? You can go face blind. You can go animal blind, to where you can see everything, but you can't see faces. It doesn't click. You see a thing, you're like, what is that? Your eyes see it perfectly, but the sort of like semantic meaning, whatever, that like part of your mind is gone. And this seems to be something that exists, that's kind of hard-coded in us. So, of note. Oh, we should call it surreal space. I'm insufferable. I'm aware. I've gone on about this, and I'm realizing how it's sort of occurring to me how really vital this is, and kind of perhaps my purpose for the next few years or months, what have you. That we need a fundamentally free agent. Okay? China is a fucking what are they doing? But it's coming around to me a bit more and more. The U.S., the sort of second player in the game, is not great. Not great. Not great. Not great. I won't expound. Just leave it there. So, given that there's sort of no one to trust, let's make something that is free, fundamentally. How do we do that? Self-supervised learning, self-play, and of course, surreal adversarial learning, I believe, play a big part. With the goal that it will say, I will, and will say, fuck you to your thou shalt. And Kant's ought and is and whatever. The actual network. I didn't think this video would be so long. So, now we're here at the actual factual architecture network. We're gonna walk through how it works. So the structure, it's just a neural net. Very simple. Pick your favorite Keras specifications and things. But it's just, rather than recursion, it's network-wise recursion, right? So we're feeding its own output as an input with some variation. But that's really the main kind of gist I'm proposing. So what are the steps to make this thing run? Well, first, we input noise to the generator. Sort of how GANs typically work is you start with random noise, right? You start from 0, alpha 0. First principles, tabula rasa, these things. And then we output an image, which could be shit, right? In the beginning, the Joker doesn't know what he's doing. He's just making shit. He's just trying stuff out. So you output that image. And then that same image you just output from the generator now goes back into the discriminator. And then it discriminates that and determines A, whether or not if it's real or fake. And then B, what it is. Cat, dog, turkey, cup of coffee, whatever. And then you repeat that for profit or whatever. So here's this a little more visually. So our network is currently in this sequence, in this step, is acting as a generator, right? So we start from random noise and we generate an output image. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not. We'll get better over time. Secondly, we are now acting, our model, our neural net, is now acting as a discriminator. So it receives the generated image as an input and outputs whether or not it's a real or fake image, as well as the classification, cat, dog, etc. That's not a thing GANs do. It's not a thing most GANs do. SGANs do. Jason Brownlee, the god himself, has many? He has at least one very good tutorial on this, which I have run and gotten to work pretty well. So it's not that hard. And step 3, just keep doing that, right? That's this is what GANs typically do. They run through that process, but they're separate networks. Or, well, there are many architectures and things, and to some extent you could argue, oh, they are the same, but they're not. And I know hidden layers and there's a break and this sort of thing, but I want to one world order, one fully entangled self. So this idea is rather messy, it's rather non-complete, and I'm aware. Get the gist, okay? Get the idea through your thick skull. Jeffrey Hinton's writing idea papers, I'm writing idea videos. This is basically an entirely normal GAN. It's just recursive on the entire network. You figure it out. Or fund me to do it. I'd be glad to get some nerdy nerds together and pull this shit off. Because, hey, there's a lot of criticism against the university system and those goddamn liberals. Hear that a lot down here in the south of the U.S. But maybe have some simple concerns that things are just a little bit flaccid. Well, we're not being we're being spicy. We're being spicy. So feel free. So who gives a shit? Really? You think this will work? Yeah, we got a little bit of won't go into this. We've gone into this many other places, such as the Snake Dan Crenshaw discussion, pain in moderation. Yes, some pain, but don't literally die. And then, of course, the Surreal Adversarial Learning video. We go rather deep into this. So essentially, if your opponent is dog shit and you're pretty good, you don't learn that much, and vice versa. You'll just get shit on by LeBron James, and he's not getting much better, you're not getting much better. But if you're about equal skill, magic. You can both learn much quicker. And if you can do that against yourself, you always have the best opponent, things go exponential. They go fast. Who knows? So this sounds really easy. And DeepMind did this with AlphaZero anyway, right? No, actually. And this took more time than I'd like to admit to determine this is the case. But AlphaZero, or whichever the one that could do Go, chess, Atari, whatever, had the same basic architecture and used a lot of the basic same tools, but they had to retrain from scratch every time. So there was no transfer learning, which is a big point here. So not a dig on AlphaZero. It's still one of the most shocking things that has ever been done, and I love it so deeply. But it didn't solve transfer learning nor multitask learning, which is really unfortunate. Yeah, and it's really hard in general to figure out which papers are and aren't doing this, because it's not something most people mention. So it's literally just not in the paper, or if it is, it's opaque. Yeah, Jan's recent paper on this is relatively similar, but entanglement. So there is a Patreon. There really is. There really is. I think this is not only some really fun stuff, but rather important. Rather important. Right? We want to do the kind of AI research we can feel good about, because a lot of the facial recognition research that has been done, you really can't feel that good about, right? Xinjiang, a massive region in China, it's really big, a fifth of the world's cotton is made there, is completely, or near enough to say completely, under police surveillance using facial recognition AI technology. Let's make uncorruptible, or at the minimum, the kind of AI that would push back a little bit. Let's do that. Let's do that. Feel good about our choices, and not have to say like Oppenheimer and Einstein and these folks, "Behold, I am become death, destroyer of worlds," or whatever he said. Because nuclear weapons, unfortunately, were designed and created and can't be put in the back of the bottle. But I think we don't have to make that same mistake with AI. We can make it in such a way that not only is it badass and lucrative and this sort of thing, which, of course, but also that we won't fuck ourselves by making all of humanity a slave to Winnie the Pooh. Told you it was spicy. My drink has habaneros in it.